Hi, my name is Lucas Werner. I'm 37 years old. I haven't been in a relationship in 5 years. I have, I think, 8 ex-girlfriends. Um, I lost my virginity when I was 27. I've only dated women that are my age and older. Um, my last girlfriend was 18 years older than me, and the one before her was 12 years older than me. So I've had plenty of experiences with older women and women my own age. Uh, in the 5 years that I've been single, I've tried to hit on younger women, especially on Plenty of Fish and OkCupid. I've had about 6 accounts deleted, uh, probably on each site. Uh, Pretty much just for overstepping my bounds. Um, I was hanging out with a lot of younger guys who pretty much just got everything they want by being as sexist as possible. Um, but it really doesn't work if you're an older guy, especially if you don't like conflict. I mean, as soon as they call me creepy, I'm there like calling them bitches. So I pretty much just cut anybody off that says that I'm creepy, because to me it's like calling a black guy a certain word. It's just something that I don't like. I don't like being insulted. That's not a good way to start a relationship. So I've spent a lot of time going from different stages in my life in these past 5 years, from being sort of like a gross out comic where I would take pictures of myself uh, like eating cereal and like pouring it all over myself. Um, just goofy shit. And so I really stopped doing that to really focus on hard science. I'm all about the age gap relationship. I've had the most success with the age gap relationships. My girlfriend in high school was 2 years older than me, and I was a sophomore when she was a senior. And it just seems to me that the age gap relationship works the best. And then when you look at my case history of all the women that I've dated, they're all pretty much with older guys. They're either married to older guys or they're dating older guys, including the one that was 18 years older than me with an older guy. That includes my dad and my stepdad, who were the older guys in their relationships with my mom and my stepmom for 30-year marriages apiece. So I've just had a steadfast rule for 5 years that I'm not going to start a relationship with any woman over the age of 26. And the reason why I picked that number isn't random. It's because everything that I've read on fertility says that you can have kids as a female later on in life, but the progesterone in women starts to drop after the age of 26 on average. So I'm not going to go past 26. And it doesn't matter to me if they don't want to have kids or not. It just, I would like to date younger women to know what that feels like. My ideal relationship, of course, would be somebody that's 18. And I'm not going to change my mind. If they're like 28, I might give them a chance, but I'd really like to not change my mind. I like to go as young as possible. The age of consent in Washington and 33 states is 16. So I've been thinking in my mind, like, scientifically, how I would do that. Like, how do you meet 16-year-old women? But I would be perfectly happy with 18. It's a social taboo, even though it's illegal. Um, but I'd be happy with like 18 to 25. I got some notoriety lately for hitting on a Starbucks barista. She was flirty, and all like these mad cow feminists started like crawling up my asshole saying, "You can't do that. You're not entitled to hit on them." Yeah, I think legally I can. You should shut your mouth. So I dropped her a note and asked her to dinner and told her about some of my research. And they kicked me out the next day, and it's raised a lot of hell. Pretty much the oligarchic, capitalistic, pig millennials are against me. The ones that are either right wing or all about the money, the establishment Democrats and the Republicans. So I would say overall the Starbucks crowd is just this like elitist liberal bullshit, and not like the punk rock liberal where I might stand. So fuck them. I don't really care. It's a clear case of discrimination because of age differences, and anybody that says different, I don't acknowledge that they exist. And if I do, it's me telling them to fuck off because I'm not gonna play your game. It is what it is. It's a social taboo for 37-year-olds to want to date 18-year-olds. But again, a social taboo was just seen on a Totino's commercial where it's a black kid dating a white girl. Imagine that 30 years ago, or even 10 years ago, a black kid and a white kid sitting on the couch watching TV eating pizza rolls. You can't imagine that. Um, you occasionally see gay couples on TV. Socially, we see more homosexual couples and interracial couples, and occasionally we see age gap couples where the guy maybe has gray hair and the female is like 21. So I really wonder where these people meet. A lot of people have said FetLife has that daddy-daughter thing, and I thought about checking that out. I'm not really into fetishes. I just would like someone younger. There's a lot of reasons for that. It's right there in the Fibonacci sequence. You might laugh at that, but it's the gaps with integers 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and the gaps between the 5 and the 8, they grow over time. So 2134 is a Fibonacci gap. I'm not saying I'm striving exactly for the golden spiral, but the universe itself does seem to build the pattern of the cosmos from integers and gaps. So it would be best for me to strive for that. The other obvious thing is that younger women produce more progesterone, which makes them more fertile. And also progesterone boosts the male immune system by causing the release of testosterone. You might notice this with your grandkids when you're hanging out with them or your kids, how good you feel about being around kids compared to like your own crowd. There's something about that. I'm really good with kids. I was a town babysitter for quite some time. When I was in 6th grade, I worked with kindergarten students. My aspiration was to become a teacher, but I never got around to it. I'm good with animals. There's been accusations that I'm a pedophile, which have been shocking to me. It's kind of like accusing a firefighter of being an arsonist. Of course, there's no proof of this. There's a lot of people that have said things that don't even make sense. I've seen Facebook texts of things that look like I could have said them, but I know for a fact I didn't. I realize I'm 37 years old, but I know I don't have Alzheimer's and didn't just say gobbledygook. There's been things that people have shown me where it's like they have a file of something that I said that would just like blah, 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 like random text to show that people have manipulated things that I've said. They've spread vicious lies about me, and people will say things without proof. And they do that because they're age phobic. And you know that this is true because you go on Plenty of Fish and OkCupid and a lot of other free dating sites, even Match.com and eHarmony from what I've heard. And if you're over 35 and try to hit on women that are under 26, it's pretty much you're the black guy in the room in the South in the 1940s. Can't be done. You have to lie about your age. But then I discovered something. I read an article I was just reading, a couple months ago in Spokane, and I found an article that said that older fathers give their kids stronger DNA. And I thought about that. I was like, wow, is there any more information on that? That's interesting. So I found a lot of other information, and it turns out it's in the government records that it was discovered, and it's in the National Institutes of Health medical records, that men over the age of 35 to 55 years old produce this chemical in their body called telomerase in their sperm, which all humans produce, that controls gene replication and DNA replication, and it increases in sperm after the 35th year to the 55th year in men, and then decreases in the rest of the body, including in females. It's the chemical that keeps you young, and I started looking at this, and I thought, wow, that actually makes sense, because you go into a forest, and it's a lot of old growth trees, and it's a lot of like young plants, like mosses and other bushes and things. It's a lot of old animals and young animals, and then you look at the pattern of animals, and they seem to prefer this pattern more than any other pattern. It's like the silverback with the younger females, the old sturgeon with the younger fish that swim upstream, the dandelions. You look at dandelions, and they go to seed, and then they're pollinated by the young flowers from the bees, and it turns out this is all flowers. All plants are like this that have two genders. The seed from the apple tree rots, or the peach tree, and it goes in the ground. Things have to ferment to become alcohol from fruit and vegetable juices. And there's a lot of stuff in society and the world that we don't even really think about. The water itself on this planet is from hydrogen oxygen, which is older than the rock, and that came from comets, which forms concrete, which is the basis of our entire infrastructure. We have to use old things all the time. We have to use petroleum, which comes from old dinosaur flesh and bone, and troglodyte mass, and mass from the Cambrian period, in order to create petroleum to go in cars that are newer than the petroleum. Of course, there's things in nature that are like that don't even have to do with us at all as a species. There's everywhere you go, it's old rock and young plant life, and the whole intergenerational integration thing is really the balance of the different ages of the universe. The Earth is 4.56 billion years old, and the universe it's in is 13.8 billion years old, and the galaxy is like 12 billion years old. And the people have only been here for maybe 7 million to 400,000 years, depending on if you start with from Homo erectus, or Homo habilis, or Homo sapiens. The life itself is 3 billion years old on a planet that's 4.5. So there's that integration. But then you look at the regular society of people, and it's all people their own age, and this has been going on for 100 years. Well, it's been going on longer than that, but really the past 100 years, it's been solidified that people should only date within their own age group. Before this period, there was a lot of age gap relationships. Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula, seems to have instigated the paternal aging effect myth. Old man sucks young blood of the female, progesterone, fertility. Old man, young woman, and then it got shunned. Of course, that probably wasn't his intent. Bram Stoker and his wife were 33 years apart. So I've looked into this, and there's a lot of things that conservatives have used liberal literature in order to pump a conservative agenda. Horton Hears a Who is a fine example of Dr. Seuss's literature being used to pump a conservative agenda against abortion, when Seuss Geisel, Dr. Seuss, was actually a liberal Democrat that supported the New Deal, FDR, and a woman's right to choose. So conservatives have long used liberal literature in order to pump their agendas. And it turns out that this whole paternal aging effect myth against older fathers has corrupted our DNA for 100 years. It started in 1912, shortly before the World War I. And since then, the generations that we pretty much split up 20 years apart have been bandwagon-esque. The generations that we're most familiar with starts with the baby boomers that started in like the 40s or 50s. Before then, it was the Lost Generation, and then there were two generations before that, the Lost Generation and Bernie Sanders generation, that like they're 70 to 80 years old, Warren Buffett. and then before that, the World War I generation. So there's been these generations where there's been this bandwagoning, and it's not even an animal pattern to do that. There's supposed to be a linkage between generations, younger female, older male, and because there hasn't, there's been a corruption of DNA. You look at the 20th century and note that it's the most violent century of all time. The 20th century was more violent than the Middle Ages, which lasted 1,000 years, and there's been less land area as time has gone on with this expansionism and whatnot. And it seems that this corrupts human DNA more than inbreeding. Inbreeding is bad, of course, it crashed the royalty, but this intra-agial mating, coupling, and especially breeding is probably worse for the system than even inbreeding. You look at the 20th century, the global warming is just a lack of compassion and intelligence, and the destruction of just these thousands of species from the dodo bird on is the endangered species list just keeps growing and growing and growing. This is human destruction. This is based on our lack of intelligence and compassion for the rest of the ecosystem and the rest of life, the way that we knocked out the bison, wiped out Native American populations, wiped out Jewish populations, the fact that we become a murderous race, and by race I mean the human species, is a sign of bad brain genetics over time. You don't just get a Hitler to rise or Pol Pot because you're an intelligent species. That happens when you're stupid, when you let people just take over your life and declare an entire group of people the enemy. The Khmer Rouge came in and wiped out Laotians, were trying to wipe out the other Asian populations in the area. Hitler came to power and wanted to wipe out the Jews, and it's not even an animal pattern to do this. There's no ant species that has ever just tried to wipe out another ant species. If they do, it's like the red ant versus black ant to clear maybe a certain area, but it's never to the point where one species just decimates another species unless there's human involvement. Mongoose were brought in to wipe out snakes in Hawaii, but that was human involvement. There's never been a species other than human that has just intentionally tried to wipe out another species or its own species. It would be like lions trying to just wipe out all the tigers, or even lions of one group trying to knock out another species of lion. And no species does this, and it really shows indicative of the problem. These genocides that have been going on in human history have shown that this breeding from too young of fathers is something that we need to watch out for too, along with inbreeding. It's really surprising how a species so intelligent can be so dumb. I mean, we've gotten to the moon. We've done things to exert our dominance on the planet, but we've done this to our own destruction. We know now that inbreeding and incest is wrong, and incest is illegal, and it ought to remain illegal. But it really should be illegal to age-cest. Knowing what we know, women mature a decade more than men. Women have 8 chromosome arms and 7 chromosome arms to the men, and we really should institute a mandatory minimum age gap of couples of at least 11 years, and not even allow men to have sex until they're 35. I mean, when you really think about it, why would you date a guy under the age of 35? Do you want telomere attrition in your kids that leads to bad medical conditions like mental illness and physical retardation and also other health problems? Every health problem is caused by telomere attrition. Do you want short telomeres on the chromosomes of your kids? If you don't, then why are you even dating men under the age of 35? Because when the male is 35 to 55, when he becomes a father, it causes telomere elongation. Would you mate with your brother or sister or date your brother and sister? Well, of course not. That's going to also cause telomere attrition, which is what happens when you inbreed. So why would you even date a male under the age of 35? Because it's fun? That's like saying that you know what meth does and you're just going to do it anyway. There are things that should be illegal. I mean, incest is illegal. We should make having sex with males under the age of 35 illegal. And a lot of women would agree that they prefer older men. So the ageism on dating sites and the age phobia from women needs to go. We need to institute a law against it. Just like with racism, I'm not saying that you should always breed outside your race. I mean, perhaps you should. It does cause a little bit of telomere elongation. But why would you persist in patterns that would cause bad behaviors in your kids, genetic breakdown in your kids, health problems in future generations, health problems in your kids? Do you really want the hospital bills? Do you really want to pay for your kids that have shortened chromosomes? So why would you breed with your brother or sister, or your cousins, or your father, or your mother? Why would you do that? Of course you wouldn't. You see the connection there. So why would you breed with men under the age of 35? Because you would just have sex with your brother and sister, even though you're not going to have kids? Don't you see how that's stupid? I mean, it's convenient for you to be in an incestuous relationship. But then you look at the cost. You look at things that are of convenience, like going to the convenience store to buy your milk versus going to perhaps Winco or just Safeway. You're going to spend more money on the milk. You're going to spend more money on all the food that you buy at 7-Eleven rather than just going to the grocery store or Costco and stocking up. So why would you inbreed? Why would you even practice an incestuous relationship with somebody when there's so many other people out there? Because you're lazy. Why would you be lazy? So why would you breed and mate with men under the age of 35? Do you want the damage done to your kids? There's also the other aspect that this is a worse thing for the mate. Why would you date a male under the age of 35 when they have rising telomerase, and you have rising telomerase as a person or female under the age of 35, and telomerase abundance causes things like cancer, depression, stress, anger, and you see couples that are under the age of 35, there's a lot more fighting and arguing, and the kids are screwy. Why would you ever date a man under the age of 35? And moreover, why would you date a man that is like a child compared to you? You've seen relationships where the guy's like 25 and the woman's like 18, and she still seems more mature than he is. Well, of course he is. They might be the best people in the world. They might be mature people that have jobs, but even as an 18-year-old female with a college education and a well-paying job, and her boyfriend's 25 with a good education and a good paying job, the guy is still way more immature than she is. So if you're 18, why wouldn't you date somebody that's at least 35? I mean, for one thing, if you date somebody that's over the age of 35 and he's a guy, your kids won't have telomere attrition, and telomere attrition leads to everything from schizophrenia to autism to bad eyesight and braces and thin skin and blood problems and every medical problem, including a susceptibility for STDs like HIV and chlamydia and gonorrhea and a weak immune system. Why would you ever date a man under the age of 35 knowing this information? Why would you want to corrupt your own self with telomere attrition of too much telomerase in the body? Met with two people together with a lot of telomerase causes strife. It causes stress and anger and depression in both parties. And why wouldn't you strive for at least an 11-year relationship? where the gap is at least 11 years by what we know of current science from at least 2013. And I could show you links on all this that are all accredited and are all tabulated by the government. One of them is, I know, is the National Institutes of Health, but I have several links that link to the National Institutes of Health. And that's a government organization. The government recognizes that fathers over the age of 35 to 55 create stronger kids. These are all accredited sources by the United States government and some British governments, and there's bound to be stuff that I can find, but I don't read Spanish or Italian or German. This is a medical fact that if the father is between 35 and 55, it creates stronger DNA in the children. I don't care what else you've read that say otherwise. It's just bigotry that you're perpetuating. The government itself has said that older fathers create stronger DNA. And the government itself says that telomerase overabundance causes anger, depression, stress, and cancer. So why would you ever date a guy under the age of 35? So a little bit more about myself. Um, I have, they say I have bipolar. I took medication from 2000 to 2007, and it caused me to go up to 400 pounds. So I stopped in 2007 and no longer take the medication. I still seek talk therapy with a counselor. Um, some people see a priest. I see a counselor, somebody that works with people that have diagnosis of bipolar. Um, so I talk to them. It's therapy for me. It keeps me calm to talk to somebody. And I'm not religious. I'm an atheist, so I don't really like religion. I hate religion. I can't stand it. I think it's evil. I think it's done some damage to this world. And all the good that religion does is pretty much just trying to make up for the past of the bullshit that they've caused to this world. Hey, I'm with Bill Maher. So I think it goes without saying that I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. I cried when Hillary Clinton lost the election. I don't like Trump. I don't like the bigotry of this world. I don't like the power structure of this world. That being said, myself, I live in a small apartment. I was homeless for 14 months. I was a helper. I helped people out with places to stay, and pretty soon I started noticing the girls because they bring their girl over, and then I recognized, hey, why don't you get out of here and leave the girl? And they're like, we can leave. And I'm like, well, I don't care. I don't hate you. It's just, I like the girl. We have things called a conversation, and she and I get along better than you do. Perhaps you should leave. And then, of course, they both leave because, the girl likes me, but for some reason, the guy she leaves with, and they don't know about anything. I mean, and I don't want violence, so they just leave. And I'm like, well, whatever. You didn't really help me at all. So I was a helper. The last place that I lived at, they moved to a better place, and I couldn't find a place for a long time. I slept on the street for a month in Olympia, and then I checked into the Salvation Army and lived there for a couple months. Then I started living with a guy, sort of a friend. I don't trust the religious. If somebody says that they're religious or they believe in God, I don't hate you. It just I don't trust you. Any religion, it can be Satanism for all I care, Hinduism. I really don't trust the religious. I'm an anti-theist, and a large part of my life philosophy comes with disagreeing with religion and theism and preferring science. So if you're an atheist or an anti-theist, you and I will probably get along quite well. And if you're a Christian and a female, we might, but I'm not going to get along with your Christian guy friends at all. I mean, to me, all they do is sit around and talk about sports, and to me, that's boring. I'd rather watch movies. I'd rather hang out with my girl and not have to deal with the rest of the world. If she goes to church, I probably wouldn't get along well with her, but I wouldn't have the same hatred that I have towards the religious guys, because they pretty much just they either go to church, talk about Jesus all the time, watch football. I don't like hanging out with guys at all. The only guys that I really like hanging out with are people that watch movies or geeks. And even then, I would much rather hang out with one female, and then they have a female maybe, and hang out with them. But I would much rather hang out with a female than guys. I'm straight. I don't want to hang out and watch movies with you all the time or play video games with you. But I'm your friend. I'm just saying that I would much rather hang out with my girl. And it would be better if you had a girl and we all had a girl, and then we got together every once in a while and hung out. That would be the ideal for me. I don't really worry about money. I get enough from the government for the bipolar. I usually go out to eat once a week or maybe twice a week. I sit around, I do nothing. I walk maybe 3 miles a day when I walk. I've lost 175 pounds. I will bitch and moan with you against the corporate subsidies that take maybe 1,000 times more from your paycheck than any person on welfare takes. So if you're really going to bicker about welfare queens, go talk to PepsiCo and other 43 corporations that haven't paid taxes in 20 years, including the NFL. And let's talk about government overspending and leave the poor people alone that get the government subsistence, because it's really the rich people taking more from you than the poor. So I'm not going to get into it with you. If you're going to even joke about stuff like that, I'm poor, so I'm a leech on the government, I'm going to say, your car was manufactured by a company that has petroleum in it, that doesn't pay any taxes and makes $1 billion a year, and has decimated land in other areas of the world in order to supersede corporations and make money, while you bitch and moan about me getting $80 a week and a food card. So we're not going to have that discussion. My family has money. I don't borrow money from my family. My mom and my stepdad live in Tempe, Arizona. They probably have $2 million in the bank. My stepdad's over 70 years old. My mom's in her early 60s, and they have money. So when they go, hopefully it won't be for a while. I mean, I would be happy if it was 30 years. If they went in 30 years, fine. I mean, but they'll go eventually, and I don't really want them to go. But it's an inevitable fact that my parents are gonna die, and they probably have like $2 million in the bank. And I got a little brother who's like 35. I'm 37. That would split probably 2 ways. We'd probably each get $1 million in inheritance, or even a $2 million in inheritance. I don't know, maybe even $500,000. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm just saying that I have money coming in 20 or 30 years. I don't know when my stepdad's gonna go. My mom had cancer. My stepdad had cancer. They're getting up there. They're old. They look good. They're doing well, but one day they're gonna go. And because they're going, they'll leave me and my little brother something, I'm sure, and my stepsisters. I don't know what it would be. It could be $100,000. There's always been talk of like building an apartment complex for people with mental illnesses that the people that live at maintain with a staff in order to beautify the area. And if they built something like that in my honor, that would be cool. But I have money from that might come through. My dad has 12 acres of land. It's nothing. It's got 2 cows and grass, and he's got like they have like a koi pond, so their land might be worth like $5 million, and that would go between my brother and my half brother, who's 4 years older than me, and my younger brother. So I would have money later on. I don't worry about that sort of thing. I have enough to maintain where I live. I mean, I can show you my apartment is just like a bed and a kitchen. It's a little studio that I pay $250 a month to live at. And from here, I'm going to be going to another place. Here has a rule where you can't have overnight guests. So I don't do that. I just moved in too. My neighbors are really nice, so I don't want to screw up that. 6 months down the road, I'll have another apartment where I can have overnight guests. I'll be paying more for rent, but then I can have overnight guests. So what I'm saying is, why don't you date me? Why don't you go out with me? You like sushi? Do you like authentic Italian food? Do you like ramen houses, gourmet burgers at Red Robin, lobster? Why would you date a guy under 35 knowing this information about telomere attrition in your kids and telomerase overabundance leading to depression and anger of being two people under the age of 35, and stress and cancer and a weakened immune system? Why would you ever date anybody under 35? Why would you date a male, especially under 35, if it's going to screw up your kids with telomere attrition and also give you telomere attrition from telomerase overabundance, leading to anger, depression, cancer, stress, and a weakened immune system? So right there, why would you date anybody under the age of 35, a male under the age of 35? It's obvious why I would date a woman under 26, because of fertility and progesterone would be good for my immune system. I like the way that younger women make me feel. And you know that I'm interested in having kids one day and getting married. I'm writing a book with all this information about the telomerase overabundance and telomere attrition. It's on my website. The backbone of that book shows that I have enough to write a book, but I'm not going to really write the book until I'm in a relationship. That's just the deal that I have going. So why not go out with me and get to know me? I'm really more interested in you. I mean, I want to know you. I want to know what your hobbies are. I want to know what you like. I've told you enough about me. If you want to know more about me, go to Conversation Our Age, conversationrage.weebly.com. But dating is supposed to be a shared experience. It's not all about me, and it's not all about you. But, you know, to me, younger women are goddesses. Why not come out and have some sushi with me? Otherwise, I'm just eating lobster and filet mignon myself once a week. So why not join me in a wonderful experience? It would be absolutely my pleasure.